Well, good morning on this very windy Sunday morning here in Costa Rica. Um, Sorry I'm a little bit late, but again, I'm working on my tech, my tech, which is a learning experience, it seems, every time I use it. So today on Reading Dementia, we will be talking about, is it dementia talking? That means when your loved one becomes very conflictive and lashes out verbally and maybe calls you names, insults you, or accuses you, we are going to discuss why that happens and a little bit of what you need to do to remedy the situation. So I'll get started here with the article, and as I read the article, I'll have some comments at some points during the text. Okay. Most dementia information tells families and caregivers not to take it personally when their loved one does or says something mean or hurtful, because it's dementia, not them. But is it really dementia talking? Okay. When the person is still verbal, especially in the earlier stages, it can seem like they're still them, just a very nasty version. They may go into a rage and verbally attack you, and it often sounds like their familiar self. Why does this happen? All right, so now I'm going to explain a little bit about what's happening in their brain when they become conflicted like that. At the beginning of dementia, executive function in the frontal lobe, which is here, is affected often before memory loss becomes noticeable. It's one of the first signs. This function controls planning, insight, self-monitoring, working memory, organizational ability, emotional control, decision-making, and thinking adaptability. So this area of our brain is basically what makes us human. It may appear that the changes to the personality are a result of their aging. Because it's an earlier sign and they just seem to be more volatile, one usually writes it off as, oh, she's getting older and crankier and has less patience or whatever. But that's not necessarily true if it is the early dementia. Judgment impairment and loss of thinking adaptability are more significant problems than one might imagine. The person becomes vulnerable to unscrupulous people, might binge spend, or makes a lot of mistakes. It becomes difficult to convince them they're wrong, and they commonly end up in a conflict caused by their lost impulse control. They may raise their voice or verbally attack or demean you. This is dementia talking, even though they may seem it's like themselves. All right, I'm going to explain another aspect of this problem. In our brain, we have what's normally referred to as the reptilian brain. It's basically back here at our brain stem, and it's visually called basal ganglia. And this part of our brain is our most primitive brain. This is the part of our brain that existed before we learned to walk on two legs, when we were still running around on four. The brain, this area is where we have our basic survival instincts, which we needed a great deal when we were first becoming human. It's also our automatic behaviors, when we get triggered, for instance, and we have an automatic reaction. That comes from our brainstem. It also controls breathing, heart rate, balance, and our hunger and our thirst. So it's basically our animal instincts, and that comes into play during anger, and here's why. When we were living in caves, and there was danger in front of us. And say, for instance, a saber-toothed tiger was on a rock and it was about to pounce. If we started to think, well, is it going to pounce? Will I have time to get away? Can I find a rock before he jumps? If we take that few seconds to even try and figure out what we're going to do, which is thinking, we're dead. We would have never evolved. Everything would have eaten us. So our brain just automatically shuts off thinking. So our frontal lobe just basically takes a back seat, and our survival instinct in our brainstem area comes forward. So it's almost impossible, with most people to, say, for instance, reason with them when they're angry. Because while they're angry, they're in fight or flight. They need to run or fight or freeze. Usually it's fight in our society and at what evolution we're at. And so we argue and we lash out. And so your loved one, when they are lashing out at you, it's coming from that basic survival fear instinct. And the fear, one would say, well, why are they afraid of me? The fear is the fact that they're losing control. Yes, it is about control, but it's not about control ego as much as it is control that my life is out of control. So they're constantly fearful of losing control. So they're going to argue the point with you while you're trying to rationalize, but Mom, nobody stole your purse, it's just lost somewhere, we'll look for it. While you're trying to rationalize that, they're in a fear mode that says, I need to fight because I'm losing something important, even though they're not aware of it. So that's the explanation of fear. Okay, so back to the article. Let's see. They also might be experiencing delusional thinking. When they believe someone has stolen from them, people are talking about them behind their backs, or you are plotting against them, which is very, very common in the earliest stages, that they feel mistrustful of the people they should be trusting the most. Your loved one might have had a temper or a suspicious nature before dementia, so it still seems that they are saying everything on purpose. They use familiar words, mannerisms, and the same tone of voice you've heard them use before. But don't be fooled. This is the dementia talking. It's so hard to differentiate between who they were and what they're saying and doing right now, because these are earlier stages, and so they're still very verbal and very combative, especially if they were stubborn people in the past or combative people in the past. It's very hard to see any difference in this scenario. Okay, now this is a story about a friend that I have made on Facebook when I was doing live talks before. She came on and she's just an amazing, amazing woman, and her story is just amazing also. So I'm going to do a little bit about Ginger Smith. Ginger Smith was a professional speech pathologist before she began having dementia symptoms, which was diagnosed as possible Lewy body's dementia. She eventually progressed to being placed in a nursing home, where she was often delirious, wouldn't eat, and was conflictive with her caregivers. The dementia quickly escalated, and by the time she went into hospice, she had gotten down to a skeletal 90 pounds. Hospice has a policy to remove all medications except for those for pain. And amazingly, when they did this, Ginger began to revive. She slowly regained her cognitive function, started eating, and was eventually well enough to go home. Her story is just amazing, and she's an amazing woman. And imagine losing all of these communication abilities when she was a speech pathologist her whole life, all right? In her book, her new book that she's about to publish, Barking Mad, Ginger explains that while in the throes of her dementia madness, she hallucinated her food as bubbling hot lava on the plate and couldn't eat it and couldn't verbally explain it. She couldn't tell her caregivers what she was seeing. She could hear herself screaming at her caregivers and yet could not stop the words coming out of her mouth. She felt possessed because it was the dementia talking. I think it's important to understand that, especially with dementia, there's almost like two people. There's the person that exists within this chaos that seems to surround them. And we don't know how much they're aware of when dementia takes over, because they're not capable, the majority. Now, of course, I'm using majority as an example. The majority of people, when dementia takes over, it's the dementia talking. And Ginger was able to hear herself and see the reactions of what she was doing with her caregivers, and she couldn't stop the words. She couldn't stop what was coming out of her mouth. She couldn't stop these, what she feels were really horrible things she was saying to her caregivers, especially when they would try to get her to eat. So there was this awareness, but there was an inability to stop the dementia talking. We don't know how many people this is happening to, because usually when they're in the throes of dementia, anger, they're in their basic fight or flight brainstem survival mode. So they wouldn't be able to be cognizant enough to explain it. All right, so we'll go to the next one. I always advise, this is a short article, I always advise families to believe that the mean, nasty words are the dementia talking. And when they are kind, funny, and loving, that's who they really are. Don't try to decipher when it is dementia and when they are themselves. Just assume that the negative is dementia and hold on to the positive memories when possible. In this way, it will be easier to emotionally weather the storms and not take it personally, regardless of whether it is them or just the dementia talking. I think it's very important to understand that you don't have to try and figure this out. When they're in crisis, what I call crisis, where the dementia is sort of taken over, you need to be able to be calm. In order for you to be calm, to calm them, you're going to have to not take anything that they're saying at you personally. It's not about you. It's just this stream of consciousness coming from a subconscious place that's connected to this basic animal survival instinct. So if you can understand that and keep your emotions to a calm level, you will be able to interact with them. And you don't want to escalate the situation. And what happens is, when you take it personally, when you believe this is an attack upon you, you become defensive and fearful. And when you're defensive, guess what happens? Your brainstem area, basal ganglia activates, and then it's hard for you to reason with yourself, let alone reason with the other person. So it's incredibly important to develop an attitude of, this is not about me. This is not about me. And then when you get the moment where you feel you can get something in, if they're on a rant, you basically acknowledge, validate their feelings. Tell them that you can see that they're upset and that you want to help. Can you tell me why you're upset, and maybe we can do something about it, or I can change. You can say that, I can change, even if you don't mean it. Just that's what they want to hear. They are not going to take responsibility for their anger when they're in fight or flight. Nobody does, whether you have dementia or not. There's a justifiable reason somewhere inside your mind for your anger or your attack. in that situation. So, but a person with dementia, even more so. So this is basically the takeaway from this reading, is that you need to stay calm, you need to not take it personally, and when you get a chance, in a very calm, consciously calm voice, you're going to say to the person that you recognize the fact that they're upset and that you want to help. And if you can get it in, one of the greatest ways to help divert these anger bouts is, as you acknowledge their anger, you also get in, Mom, I love you and I want to help and I'm here for you, and can you tell me what's bothering you so that I can help? Offering your help and reaffirming that you love her no matter what, because she's obviously, imagine she's like Ginger. What if she's actually aware that she's saying all those things and can't stop it because the dementia has taken over her brain? So this is a very quick reading this week. These readings I'm doing every week on Sunday at 9 o'clock. I will I'm also starting another type of reading. These are the articles that I've written. I've written over 200 articles in the past couple of years, which I post on social media, and also several of them have been published. This is the book that, it's kind of hard because wasn't backwards, good. Journey Through the Infinite Mind, the Science and Spirituality of Dementia is available on Amazon. But this is going to be the subject of my future readings. I'm going to have the articles I'm going to continue reading, but I'm also going to start doing a live Facebook where I do chapters out of my book. There are 14 chapters, so it will be 14 readings. Chapters are a lot longer than the articles. They're usually about 2,000 words. So it's if you haven't gotten the book, or for whatever reason, it's in English, versions in Spanish, also in Kindle or paperback on Amazon. And like I say, I will be starting to do the book readings on live Facebook also. This reading will be recorded. It's being recorded, and I will be putting it on my YouTube channel. I have the other readings on my YouTube channel. If you've missed them, please subscribe, because it really helps me with the new tech of the YouTube. I'm just learning about YouTube now. So until next Sunday, I hope you've got some valuable information out of this short but very to the point reading on behaviors. And I'll see you next Sunday. So long. Let's see if I can figure out how to turn this off. Okay.